This presentation is about the academic indicator that's going to be used alongside the California School dashboards. It's made up of two components, distance from level 3 and the 5x5 grid. Here's some vocabulary to be aware of. LOS stands for lowest obtainable scale score. HOS, highest obtainable scale score. You can see the acronym there. What you're really going to be interested in is knowing the average grade level score, because those are your students. And then we have the MET scale score, which is set by CASP. And then finally, there's some interchangeable vocabulary. Distance from MET, which is like MET standards, also means distance from level 3. Here's an example of a student test score answer sheet, not answer sheet, but letter that would go home to parents, student score report. Here's Sophia S. Jackson. And so where's LOS show up? Well, here's the third grade score way down here. That's LOS at the very bottom, and then there's HOS at the top. So that's the highest obtainable score. There's no data there because they're just trying to compare third grade scores to fourth grade scores on a bars side by side. Again, down here on fourth grade, there's no data right there because the LOS and HOS are higher. So just continue on. There's MET scale score. That blue line is the difference between, let's say, level 1, 2. It's the difference between level 2 and level 3 scores, and 4, the distance from standard nearly met to standard met. Over here on the right is fourth grade. There's the LOS for right. Fourth grade, the HOS for right for fourth grade. There's MET scale score. There's the blue line, and again, here's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Everything is based on level 3 scores. So you can almost think of this, and I would think of this as like that's a 0 on the number line. Scores above it are positive, scores below it are negative. On the second page of the student score report is another grid that shows the various levels. There's the LOS, there's the HOS, there's the average MET score, there is the level 3, the difference between level 2 and level 3 is right there. And again, you may want to think of this as a number line like a 0. We have positive scores over here, negative scores over there. So here's that all for a setup and a review for this, is that here are the 3rd grade through 8th grade scores listed for ELA CASP, and we have the range of, there's LOS again, and notice that they change as they go down. There's HOS, they change as they go down as well. Notice they always increase, much like MET scores are increasing. And then we also have average grade score. And just to highlight again, that level 3 MET scale score is used interchangeably, back and forth right there. And here is the previous slide, just taking the 2404 and the 2432 and just highlighting those at a greater level, is blowing that up here. There's the 2404, that's the average grade MET average score, and this is level 3. Again, these are your students. These are your student scores, and this was set by CASP. Okay, and so this difference right there, that gap, that's the distance from level 3. So if we were to do a computation, we take 2432, subtract 2404, you get negative 28 actually, because you're to the left, and so your distance from level 3 is negative 28. That would be your status. So math has a similar story. We're not going to go through detail, but you also compute a distance from level 3, which is basically that gap, for all the grade levels for your school. So this slide is just basically telling us that, hey, where'd this come from? Well, a lot of input with State Board of Education from advisory groups, stakeholders, smart testing groups like ETS and Technical Design Group, and State Board settled on this as the methodology for academic indicator. So distance from level 3, here is an example. So using the grade 6 CASP mathematics test, the lowest scale score to obtain Level 3 is 252.8. If a student scored 25.05, that student would be 23 points below Level 3. If a student received a score of 25.35, that student would be 7 points above Level 3. And so with that kind of information, we have positive scores and negative scores, and we'd have to do that calculation for every student. Once all student scores are compared to Level 3, the distance difference is average to produce a school level, LEA level, or student group average score. A lot of information right there. That's why I like it graphically, because this next slide I think makes a lot more sense than words. So here you go. So here is grade 6 math scale range. So there's the loss, there's the Haas, standard met, which is your Level 3. So we have 4 students. Sally scored 112 points below. So there's Sally's score at 24.40. Then we have Billy. Billy shows up at 25.05. Then Jason is at 25.76. And then Debbie is at 25.56. So notice their scores are either negative or positive based on whether they were there above or below standard met. You total up those scores, you get 131 points below Level 3. Now you want the average, which means you're going to divide it by 4. You get 32.3. So the school-wide average is 32.3 points below Level 3, and that's how we would characterize the status for 6th grade, or in this case, school-wide average, because we only used 4 students. But the idea is that you will have a school average indicator of negative 32.3 points below Level 3, and that is considered your status. Now, here's some implications on calculating the Level 3 distance, just to be aware of. Here are 5 students that grew and 5 students that didn't grow. They went the other way. You do the total and get the average. It's 14.2. That's awesome. Looks like we had a couple students right here that kind of carried that group. Now, here's another example. It's an extreme example. Let's say 9 students moved forward, 1 student went backwards, but let's say this was our gate kid that just had a really bad day, and all these other kids were just kids that really worked hard all year and moved forward, but we had a bad day. Well, look what happened. You have a total and an average. And so even though you had 9 kids move forward, your distance from Level 3 is a 1, so that's significantly different. What the implication means for instruction in your school is that the focus is really on all students, not bubble students alone. The bubble student work is really good when you're wanting to look at moving, let's say, your percentages above from, let's say, standard nearly met to standard met, and you want that percentage to move forward because that's data you have. It's great to know where your kids are, and we traditionally refer to those students as bubble students, and you want to do that because it helps show how many students have actually moved into standard met. I mean, that's really awesome. But we also need to realize, and we've known this from the past too, is that the focus really is on all students. It's just that this indicator now demonstrates that. So in the past, if you had a GATE student that was like advanced proficient at the highest range and went down to 100 points, they still stayed advanced proficient. It didn't really impact your overall school score. Now, since the way this indicator is built, the focus is really on all students. So you want to make sure all students are receiving a high quality education, and that really is just like your RTI triangle. It's just that when we take a look at some bubble students, we're giving some extra attention for those. And again, that does work well with the other reporting that you do with CASP scores. So you just want to be mindful how you are demonstrating your scores out to your public, how you are focusing on students, and basically the big message is that we focus on all students and we give students very targeted support. So this slide right here is just saying that this is how we calculate the distance from Level 3. It basically is telling us it's the needed improvement to bring the average student to Level 3. And then who's included in the testing It's those students that were from the first Wednesday in October at your school site without a gap in enrollment of more than 30 consecutive calendar days. Okay, now let's look at the 5x5 grid. The formula for the academic indicator in the 5x5 grid, and also known as the colors. Two big ideas, status and change. And in order to know our status, you're going to take your 2016 distance from level 3 average. That's your status. The change is that you're going to use that same number from 2016 distance from level 3, but now there will also be a 2015 distance from level 3. You haven't seen that number yet because it was just created back in January. So you're going to subtract those two numbers, and then that's going to give you your change. So your change is based on the difference between these two numbers. So let's do a real example. So here's Ruby Elementary. 2016 DF3 is negative 52. So that's your status. That's done. Change, we got to do some subtraction. We need to go back one year to 2015. Distance from level 3 average is negative 89. So now we have the two pieces of data we need. You take the current average, which is right here, which is 2016, and subtract the prior year average, which is 2015. And so there's 2015 data, there's 2016 data. You subtract it and you get a positive 37. That's fantastic. That's huge to celebrate. And how this shows up on your 5x5 grid is as follows. You have this 2016 data over here that we call the status. And so you just read through this column to figure out where you would fall, range from very high to very low. And so because the status is negative 52, and we read this right here, more than 25 below to 95 points below, well, there's the status for the school. Now, we might, in NCLB days, we'd look at that and go, oh, that's really sad because you're really low. Well, the academic indicator is really about growth mindset and continuous improvement. There is hope, and this is what you really need to understand on your school sites and your districts is this idea of change. The change calculation that we created on this previous slide over here of 37 is going to be placed on this grid somewhere on these columns. And so now where does change equals 37 show up? We read all this information and go, oh, look at that. We increased significantly by 15 points. That's really awesome. So because by more than 15 points, so we're in this column. So if we go back to the status over here, where our status is here, our change is up here, and that means our overall color is yellow. And that's what's going to show up on your California dashboards. Very important to note this, is that messaging out to our communities and the way this is designed is that we really is focused about change. And when you think about a goal to set for schools, you're probably thinking that we should at least increase by 5 or more points on our academic indicator for all students to move forward. If you're doing that, there's a high likelihood that if you're increasing by 5 points, you may most likely be in this yellow, green, green, blue zone range. And if you're very industrious and you increase by 15, you're always in yellow, green, or blue. So California did a great job of putting growth mindset into our schools. So you could have, let's say in the past, low achieving schools that just were hammered by NCLB, but had growth, but was never recognized well. In this model, we definitely have much to celebrate with solid growth. And that's important for you to understand as a site principal or district office official that change is the name of the game and we want growth. And so with that, there's some information there for you to consider for academic indicator, distance from level 3, and the 5x5 colored grid. When you go to your California dashboards, you now have the background to understand how those colors were originated from.